Massive fallout of Canada defending terrorist Hardeep Nijjar. Report says Canada told to ensure parity in diplomats. Financial Times report says Canada to send back 41 diplomats in 7 days. Canadian diplomats may be stripped of diplomatic immunity if they stay in India beyond the deadline.
There should be parity in strength and rank equivalence. Their numbers here are very much higher than ours in Canada. I assume there will be a reduction from the Canadian side.
India-Canada ties at an all-time low. Will Justin Trudeau continue with his absurd allegation? That's our top focus on India First. So India has told Canada to repatriate 41 Canadian diplomats by the 10th of October, according to a Financial Times report. Now, if the Canadian diplomats remain in India beyond the 10th of October, they could lose their diplomatic immunity. The report also says Canada has 62 diplomats in India and New Delhi wants parity, not just in numbers, but also in seniority. And this effectively means 41 Canadian diplomats will have to go back in the next 7 days. As India-Canada ties reach an all-time low, what are the ramifications of this step? We debate that on the show. I'm Gaurav Sawant. We get you a 360-degree perspective from India, from Canada and from Europe. But first, as always, the headlines. NewsClick founder Prabir Purkayastha and Human Resources head Amit Chakravarti arrested after Delhi Police Special Cell raids over 100 locations over alleged Chinese funding. Prime Minister Narendra Modi drops a political bombshell in the state of war. Telangana says he rejected K. Chandrasekhar Rao's request to join the NDA.
कि हैदराबाद के चुनाव के बाद वो दिल्ली मुझे मिलने आए, बहुत मुझे आदर किया और इतना प्यार दिखाया ये केसीआर के कैरेक्टर में नहीं है.
Prime Minister Modi's big caste counter in poll-bound Chhattisgarh and Telangana says the Congress is trying to divide Hindus. Trinamool Congress versus BJP over central scheme funds escalates. TMC's women MPs Mahua Moitra and Dola Sen dragged out of Union Minister's office. Abhishek Banerjee detained. Fresh revelations in the Delhi terror module bust. Mumbai Shabad House and the Maryada Purushottam Sri Ram Temple at Ayodhya were on the target of Muhammad Shahnawaz, the nabbed ISIS terrorist who led terror training and bomb-making camps. India is reported to have asked Canada to repatriate 41 diplomats by the 10th of October. That's within a week from today, to ensure parity in numbers and in seniority. Canada has 62 diplomats in India, and to achieve that parity, 41 of them will have to be sent out of India by the 10th of October, or they stand to lose their diplomatic immunity. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's statement of credible allegations of a possible link between the killing of a Canadian terrorist, Hardeep Singh Nijjar, and the role of Indian agencies has angered New Delhi. India has described Trudeau's allegations as absurd. Our Foreign Affairs Editor Geeta Mohan and Anisha Mathur with this report.
The diplomatic war between India and Canada over the murder of Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar escalates further. New Delhi has asked Canada to reduce the number of its diplomats in India. According to a report in the Financial Times, New Delhi has told Ottawa it must repatriate roughly 40 diplomats by October 10. The report says India has threatened to revoke diplomatic immunity of staff who continue to stay after the deadline ends. According to the Financial Times, Canada has 62 diplomats in India, while New Delhi has told them to reduce the headcount to 41. No official statement has been issued by the foreign ministries of the two countries. The Ministry of External Affairs has earlier informed Canada that there should be parity in strength in the diplomatic presence.
Yes, we have informed the Canadian government that there should be parity in strength and rank equivalence in our diplomatic presence, in mutual diplomatic presence. Their numbers here are very much higher than ours in Canada. The details of this are being worked out, but I assume there will be a reduction from the Canadian side.
A Canadian senator has claimed the step isn't going to help improve the situation. Claiming that India sees Canada as an easy mark, Peter Boehm said that India knows that Canada has limited capacity to retaliate and hence is taking these actions. Canada has so far done nothing to address India's concerns over the free run given to Khalistani extremists on their soil. Bureau Report, India Today.
There's a big statement coming in from the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who said that Canada wants to remain on ground in India. Justin Trudeau says presence in India needed to help Canadian families, and Canada is not looking to escalate situation with India. Canada will engage responsibly with India, and Canada will engage constructively with India. That's a statement that's come from the Canadian Prime Minister. The question is the Canadian Prime Minister now seeking to reduce tensions with India? He's made multiple statements in the past, from credible allegation to credible information to possible link, but nothing, absolutely nothing on credible evidence that will stand scrutiny in a court of law. Now, I quickly want to bring in our guests on this special broadcast. What should one make of Justin Trudeau's statement? Joining me on India First is Velina Chekharova, founder and geopolitical strategist of FACE and visiting fellow at the Observer Research Foundation. Ambassador Veena Sikri is a former top diplomat. Daniel Boardman is a senior journalist of the National Telegraph from Toronto. My first question is to India Today's Anisha Mathur, joining me with the latest on the story. Anisha, any word whatsoever from the Ministry of External Affairs yet on this Financial Times report? And in Canada, are there calls to seek evidence, or in the run-up to elections, is Trudeau continuing to adopt that tough posture?
Well, Gaurav, we've been seeing a lot of statements coming from Canadian politicians, even discussions. This issue had been raised in the Canadian Parliament a number of times. But as far as the Indian MEA is concerned, there has been no official word on this Financial Times report just yet. Of course, we did just hear from our report that Mr. Bagchi had very clearly said that India has been requesting for parity. But if you look at what is happening on the ground in Canada, the concerns of Indian origin people in Canada, the Indians in Canada, they are more worried about what this will do with regard to their visas, what will it do to people who want to come home for the winters, what it will do to the students who are waiting to go to Canada. So those are the concerns being raised by the ordinary person on the ground in Canada. But if you look at the politics of it all, there have been calls from the Conservative Party in the Parliament in Canada to call for a registry of foreign agents. There have been calls for the evidence to be brought out. There is a lot of very conflicting messaging that is coming in Canada as far as politics is concerned. But on the ground, the people are more worried about what it does to their families. Back to you.
And absolutely no one asking for action to be taken against Khalistani terrorists, of Canada being seen as another Pakistan, of Khalistani terrorists getting a free run in Canada. Let me bring in Velina Chekharova. Ma'am, how do you read India's actions and Justin Trudeau's response?
Well, thank you for the invitation. First and foremost, of course, the reactions are quite mixed, mostly coming out from the traditional American allies such as Australia, UK, and well, of course, also the United States, as we've already learned that the United States has apparently provided intelligence within the Five Eyes cooperation with Canada. Now here, first and foremost, we need to clarify that there is no sense, or let's say the level of understanding about the whole problem is quite low among the population in these countries outside of this community. That is the first, I think, very important component. So you only have to look at how the media coverage was, how actually, you know, he was, I mean, Nijjar was presented as, you will not, you have no information about any kind of terrorist-related activities. That's the first narrative. Second important point is obviously the importance of the Sikh community within Canada from a political point of view. And this is already, I think, playing a major role ahead of the upcoming elections. So here what we need to actually discuss is how this, I would argue, domestic pressure on PM Trudeau, how this is already backfiring in terms of what, you know, the PM Trudeau decided to do and to announce. So this, I think, is the most important point. There are already informations that probably media leakage was the main reason why he actually decided to make the move and announced allegations. So we are still at the level of allegations. That is also important. And final point, what I think that we need to get an idea of is how practically this political component, that is to draw the attention away from the real problems. There is an ongoing investigation that has been just announced in Canada about an alleged interference with the Canadian elections coming from countries such as China. And I would argue that probably the timing of these allegations now linked to India is not coincidental.
Very interesting you say that. Daniel, is there an escalation in this diplomatic standoff seeking the repatriation of 41 Canadian diplomats? And in your appreciation, the statement that's come from Justin Trudeau, is he trying to backpedal now?
Yeah, I think Justin Trudeau's sort of come face to face with reality that, you know, there's not much we could do here if we truly get into a diplomatic war with India. There's really only one legitimate punch that we can throw, which would be to freeze wire transfers and remittance payments from Indian Canadians back to India and hurt a few thousand families and cause a bit of a row there. But other than that, you know, we don't really have another really haymaker to throw. So that's the only thing we really have in the chamber. And, you know, firing it might result in more damage than good. So Trudeau is definitely trying to smooth things out. The rhetoric is we need India now, we need this, we need that. There is sort of, I'm not sure if it's a back pedal. This is more of a Trudeau side pedal because he doesn't really ever take responsibility. He just kind of oscillates in different directions and then says things, and then the media sort of picks up its own narrative, and hopefully everyone forgets what happened before we really care. That doesn't really work in foreign markets, but it is sort of a tactic he uses domestically.
Okay.
So I see this, you could say it's an escalation, but I'll make the argument that this actually might be a pathway for de-escalation here. I don't really buy the whole we need parity thing. Like, it doesn't really matter, 61, 41. India's a capable diplomatic country. It is a good excuse, though, to create a situation, then this is a hypothesis, where the Indian government may look and say, okay, there's 61 diplomats, and knowing what I know about the Trudeau Liberals and the NDP is, and the current state of their affairs, not all of those people would probably hold, let's say, neutral opinions in India. I wouldn't be surprised if there's Khalistani sympathizers, Pakistani-linked people who the Indian government has a severe problem with. And you can look at this as, oh, it's an escalation, or is this an opportunity for Canada to actually pick and choose who stays and who goes? I think Trudeau has a chance here to say, all right, let's clean house and take out the worst anti-India actors, the people who might be the most antagonistic. And if he does that, I think that would be sort of a backdoor, under the table sign of good faith, that at least he understands there's an issue here and we can start to work towards a solution.
But is he actually going to do that, or just the opposite? Ambassador Sikri, the Canadian media has also been reporting that Trudeau has evidence which will be produced in courts of law at an appropriate time. So is Trudeau actually trying to dial down tension, or would this be seen as a tactical retreat?
No, I don't think there's a retreat of any kind. Our external affairs minister, when he was in the USA and had very high-level meetings there, he'd made it very clear that anything that we have received so far from the Canadian government is neither specific nor relevant. So clearly, there is absolutely no evidence of any kind that has been given to the government of India that is either specific or relevant. We have also said, our external affairs minister said, that we are prepared to discuss if any concrete evidence, specific evidence, instead of just allegations, are provided to the Indian side. We are prepared to look into it and talk to the Canadian government about it. I would like to say very clearly that the withdrawal of the indication that 41 Canadian diplomats are going to be withdrawn is just a very logical follow-through of what was conveyed by the Indian government to the Canadian side many weeks ago. And I think the government has followed up on it, because Canadian government did not take action. Now the Indian side has named the diplomats who are to be withdrawn. So I think there's no choice in this matter now, but they would have to be withdrawn. The Canadian government has a very big presence in India. They have trade offices in Kolkata, Ahmedabad, Chennai, and Hyderabad, and they have consulates and embassies in New Delhi and Bengaluru and Chandigarh and Mumbai. So obviously, India, on the other hand, has presence just in Ottawa, Toronto, and Vancouver. So the parity that is being asked for is fairly logical. It's quite normal in diplomatic practice to have a parity. The number of consulates on each side is normally on parity. And I do think that the question that should seriously worry all Canadian citizens is that why is this whole issue of the Canadian citizens making secessionist statements against India, why is this being allowed on Canadian soil?
Why does Canada stand with terror is the question that I actually want to put to all Canadians. And Valina Chekharova, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar was very clear that there's a climate of violence, there's an atmosphere of intimidation that Indian diplomats and Indian citizens face in Canada. Canada has done nothing to address that. Where do Five Eyes intelligence partners stand on this in your appreciation? Because the view from India is, whether it's the US or Canada, are they actually standing with the terrorist like Hardeep Singh Nijjar and taking on India for a terrorist?
Well, here is my view. Once again, I think that you need to take a look at the political climate in Canada right now, and that will deliver the answer to your question. And that is that, in my view, nothing is going to happen, very little is going to happen following this actually incident in terms of any concrete measures or actions by the Canadian government. And here is my explanation. In 2023, there are already 15 Sikh MPs constituting more than 4% of the House of Commons. And as we know, actually, the leader of the New Democratic Party, this is the de facto coalition partner of the minority liberal government, which is now led by the Prime Minister Trudeau, is also a Sikh. This is Jagmeet Singh. And he's, by the way, one of those very strong voices right now as we speak and try to make sense of the whole diplomatic role, who actually suggested officially that India is also introduced into this investigation that I pointed to, an investigation that is going to continue at least for the next 16 to 18 months, and will investigate interference of foreign countries into Canadian election systems and Canadian election processes. So you understand that the political component is very strong ahead of elections, because we know for a fact that Canada will have elections in 2025, if not earlier, because the domestic situation is also quite fragile at the moment. Yes. Now, PM Trudeau is trying to avert the attention away from more serious domestic problems when it comes to the, skyrocketing skyrocketing costs, but he's also, in my view, trying to somehow accommodate his most important political partner ahead of the elections. And this is why I think that these allegations will probably remain at the level of allegations, because I don't expect from a geopolitical point of view that any of the five ICE partners, including the United States, will really have a strong interest in aggravating India right now, because all of them are currently interlinked with India on various formats and platforms.
Okay, Daniel, reports in Canada seem to indicate that Canada has what is being described in the Canadian media as bombshell evidence in the form of communications between diplomats, which will be produced or may be produced in courts of law. Now, is Trudeau adopting a tough line to shore up numbers ahead of elections and not cede any territory to Jagmeet Singh, who sees himself as future Prime Minister of Canada?
No, that's not exactly how the electorate would work. And within like the Canadian left, matters of geopolitical security aren't really front of mind. I mean, my colleague here gave a pretty good synopsis of Canada and Trudeau and our incredibly soft on terrorism approach in all types of terrorism, not just Khalistanis. Justin Trudeau's a man who, when criticized for bringing back literal ISIS fighters into Canada, screamed Islamophobia and said ISIS fighters will be a powerful voice for de-radicalization. So our Islamist de-radicalization program was going to be headed up by ISIS fighters. This is Trudeau logic. So if we have bombshell communications, if we have the Indian government bragging, hey, we did it here, yeah, that might cause a diplomatic row, and we have to sort of protect our sovereignty and all that. But in the reality of geopolitics, are other countries, like outside India and Canada, are other countries and people really going to rally to the guy who's on video supporting suicide bombings, on video praising the KLF and putting up posters of terrorists, on video threatening Hindus and Indian diplomats? Like, it's all on video. None of the video makes it into Canadian media, but the rest of the world will see it. And it's hard to really go to war with a geopolitical power like India over Hardeep Singh Nijjar.
Over a terrorist. In fact, that's the point. Ambassador Sikri, I have the last 30 seconds on this part of the show. But seriously, Canada or the United States or some leadership in the United States, they want to take on India defending a terrorist like Hardeep Nijjar? That sounds quite bizarre.
Absolutely bizarre. You're absolutely right. And I think that, again, External Affairs Minister Jaishankar's talks in USA, Washington, D.C. have set the record straight on that one. So I think there's no misunderstanding between India and USA on that one, because India is absolutely and perfectly, unequivocally clear that we will not tolerate such anti-Indian statements by, in the name of local politics of Canada. Please do your local politics. I mean, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is entitled to do his local politics, but not at the cost of India. I think that should be very clear, and any person who tries to do politics in Canada at the cost of India will only get his fingers burnt, and that is what is happening right now, because I don't think you can preach secessionism in another country and call it politics in your country. I think that time is gone. That time absolutely does not exist.
And just preaching secessionism is one part of the story. To be on an Interpol Red Corner notice, to wield AK-47s, to be involved in terror, to be wanted for terror, any civilized rule-based order, any democracy would be expected to hand over people like Nijjar to face due process of law instead of being defended and then claim to be a democracy. Anyway, I will have to let that, Ambassador Sikri, let what you've said be the last word on the show. But Velina Chekharova, Ambassador Sikri and Daniel Boardman for joining me here on India First. Many thanks.